Well, greetings everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the wonderful show we call the Inworld Review. The Inworld that we're talking about is the hypergrid, or basically, open simulator worlds. If you've heard of Second Life, you can probably imagine what open simulator worlds look like. Except there's hundreds, if not thousands, of them, where there's only one walled garden called Second Life. But they share viewers, share a certain style of doing things, and moreover, open simulator worlds are connected to each other via the hypergrid, so you can jump from grid to grid at your heart's content to explore and do everything. And we basically look at the arts, the destination, and of course the people that are scattered around doing interesting things on the hypergrid. And we never come short of people doing interesting things on the hypergrid. So that's our brief, so to speak, and we're glad to have you here. Now, first of all, a few introductions. On my right, I have our tech wizard and a commentator when he finds time. Loves sitting and fiddling with knobs, basically. His name's James Atloud, so welcome, James.
Hi, Mal. Thanks for having us here. I think I need a wizard hat now.
You probably do.
Definitely.
A wizard, yeah. The wizard of... No, never mind. Right, okay, and on my other side, on my left-hand side, it's none other than my co-host, but also the princess of the safari, which you could be this week. when it's
The janitor, not the princess.
Oh, God. No. You can't possibly be the janitor. Well, you can be a part-time janitor, but you're basically the queen of safari. Okay, none other than Thurza Ember. Welcome, Thurza.
Lovely to be here once again, Mal. Looking forward to the show.
Right, don't we all? Right, now, a bit later on, after we've taken care of some of our introductory business here, we'll be welcoming two guests. I'll introduce them now, just so you know they're here and everything. They're both from a training facility which operates on Kitely grid. Training Solutions, did you say it was again? I've forgotten myself now. Well, anyway, we'll get to it a bit later. So please welcome Cooper Swizzle.
Hi.
Hi. and Carla Kinkaid Yoshikawa, and that's the last time I'm saying it.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting us here. We're really excited to be here.
Wonderful. Right, well, from now on, you'll be Cooper and Carla, which is pretty damn simple once I've got over the surnames. I was intrigued by that surname. You're American, but the surname is a combination of Scottish and Japanese, so go figure.
A wonderful melting pot. That's great.
You can tell it later, yeah. Right, okay. So, to get us started, I've actually got a bit of an echo now, but I don't know where that's coming from, but never mind. To get us started, we'll start where we normally start, I think, actually. I'm going to hand over to Thurza for our little interlude program, which, by the way, we post on our channels on Facebook. It's just about 5 minutes of destinations as opposed to the full show, and we sort of cut it out and send it to Facebook as opposed to the long show. And it's called Hypergrid Happenings. So with that, it's over to Thurza.
Well, yes, if it's happening, it's hypergrid. And I have an echo. I apologize. But
Yes,
this week we have one or two really interesting places to talk about. The first thing is something happening later today, and that is on Kitely Grid, appropriately. It's Blender Buddies. This is something that happens every week, but it's worth remembering that this is an opportunity for people to come and get some answers to their questions, some encouragement, or just maybe share things that they're making. It's Mike Laurie runs the course, and it's a very fluid and open conversational type situation. So don't feel that you're going to be entering some kind of very formal classroom setting. It's on Kitely. It's on the region called Space Force, which is just a beautiful region and will inspire you. Even if you don't build anything in Blender, you'll love it anyway. It's a gorgeous grid over region over there on Kitely. So that's happening later today at 3 p.m. Second Life time. Here's something that's happening tomorrow. This is Clara, Bella, Caramel, and Zeno Shifu, who are having a jazz evening tomorrow. This is happening right here on Osgrid. It's a relatively new region, Zenotown. They've been together a little while now, so congratulations to them. And they're both doing some DJing. So the event starts at 11 o'clock Second Life time, which is 8 o'clock here in Europe. And it'll go on for 3 hours altogether, an hour and a half of Zenos and then an hour and a half of Clara. So that will be worth looking forward to, especially as Clara's is themed Baby, It's Cold Outside, and we can all relate to that at the
Very,
moment, I
very
think.
much, yes.
Another thing that's coming up is over on still on Osgrid rather, over on the Curse of the Gypsies region. It's Putri Solo, who of course is a Indonesian singer, so a very different style to much of the music we hear in Opesim. She's a fantastic person, a fantastic singer, really worth listening to her if you get the opportunity. I really recommend it. And the Curse of the Gypsies, of course, is Adriana Dark Hearts region. She's a great DJ too, if you ever get to hear one of her sets, Adriana. Here's another thing that's happening. This is coming up. Well, it started really yesterday, and it's going to be lasting the whole month of December. And this is the event that happens at Craft every year, which is about stopping violence against women. It's run by Rosanna Galvani, who we all know, and also by Fiona Simon. It's on a region, a special region for it's called Più Donne Zero Violenza, which means more women and zero violence. And they're actually got an art show that's coming up called Women's Bodies, which explores the way that women often get exploited. I was talking to Tina Bay earlier, and she's very busy preparing her piece of art for this show. So look forward to that. You can go anytime and see what's going on over there, although they will have many, many evenings with poetry readings and presentation of books and all kinds of things like that. So if you're interested in stopping violence to women, or you think you would like some ideas about how you could also contribute to this important concept, whether you're in virtual worlds or out, a vitally important question, then please go over there to Craft Grid and take a look at that. Something else that's coming up, a little bit more cheerful maybe, and that is a carnival. Now it's not happening for ages yet. It's going to be in February, but that said, it's an opportunity now and in the next weeks to build a float and participate in Pangaea's carnival. That means that you get to come be in the Cologne events that they will be having. So if you're interested, I would recommend you go over and see Marlon Wayne over on Pangaea Grid, because it's an opportunity to promote your own grid or your own project that you're doing. And it's also a fun way to be building and being part of the community. So that's over on Pangaea Grid, which we all know very well. And here is something that is coming up too that we're going to be able to talk about again in a minute with our guests, because Cooper Swizzle and Carla are both part of this. It's an event where you get to be part of a mission to, well, you kind of get to be Robin Hood, basically. So what they're doing is they're building this quest game, and they're doing a little bit of troubleshooting, testing this all out. So they are looking for people willing to give some feedback and critique it. So we're going to, in a moment, talk to Carla and Cooper about this. So I'm really looking forward to it. It looks like a great deal of fun. And of course, that's a Kitely event. And we'll hear about a little bit more about that in a moment. Could not be here on Inworld Review without mentioning the Open Sim Simulated Community Conference, which is coming up on the 9th and 10th of December. So not many days to go until that. And we're looking forward to going over to see that for the weekend. And finally, let me just remind you all, if you do have an event, a project, a party, some kind of opening, or perhaps you teach a class, please let us know. We'd be very happy to include it in our next week's Hypergrid happenings.
Well, thanks a lot, Zozo, for that little roundup. Some exciting stuff there. In fact, I think the little slide, the Robin Hood slide, and maybe we go backwards and just leave that frozen on the screen for when we're talking later in case we want to refer to it. Yeah, there it is. Lots to read on the video screen, but there we go. We'll get round to that in a bit. Okay, well, before we move on to our guests, as you may or may not know, Sosa here writes profusely. She has, even though we're not running Safari at the moment, although oddly enough, it's only a few weeks away, she keeps us up to date with various things there, and also our Hypergrid International Expo has a blog, and we get a few things there. And although I haven't got them here, Zez is also writing some very interesting sort of, they're more like profile add-ons than blogs for the OSCC site, which, well, quite a few of them now anyway, aren't there? You've done quite a few intros for that.
It's all very exciting. Can't wait for the OSCC. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, well, what you have written about this week, anyway, just to catch up, the Safari blog has a piece here on Gianna Spada, Master of Art, and what I do here, when I can get to it, is move the slides. Here we are. Right. Okay. These are the slides that came with the article. So, yeah. Oh, I can't do it anyway. The sun, the sea, and the wind. Tell us about this.
Well, yes, Gianni was at the HIE, of course. He's speaking in Italian about his beloved Puglia, which is a region in Italy, basically the heel of Italy, if you think of Italy as a boot. And Gianni he's a great builder, and he's decided to use the space that he has on his region to do a bunch of things, but one of them is to recreate some architecture in that region that is a little bit less well known. A bit of a challenge to do that and get it just perfectly right. But it's such a beautiful region. I really encourage everybody to go over there. Very atmospheric. You feel like you're really in the south of Italy. It's beautiful.
I love the overgrown effect on that bridge, actually. It's sort of...
he knows what he's doing.
It's well worn, or it looks well worn, should we say. Yeah, so very picturesque. And this, is this, do you know, is this all local architecture?
It's an absolute, yes, it's exactly what it would look like if you went. In fact, he has photographs right there. So if you
right.
Went to visit Italy, you would see exactly this, except for the interesting thing that you cannot go inside the church in real life because it's unsafe. So it's close to the public. But of course here, you know, he's been able to make it visitable, and that's really the trick.
So I can go inside there. I can go inside there without the big
fall
bell
on your head.
The big bell.
Well, it depends how tall you are that day. Knowing you might be too tall that day.
Oh dear. Oh, cute little cave there, Bronze Age.
Yeah, it's all kinds of, it's different periods in time. So this is the Dolmen della Chianca, which is a Bronze Age. It's multiple things. There's a tomb, and they've found even things like cooking pots there, and it's obviously was a religious site too. So it's really interesting. It's packed a huge amount into one very small area. And these little round houses, they're the traditional trulli that Puglia is famous for.
Is this on Craft Grid?
Yeah.
By the way?
Yes, it is.
Because the Italian connection. Okay, fair enough. Well, how did I guess? Yeah, find a picture there too, which is just information screen.
It's really, I've just only scratched the surface there. There's so much to learn, and it's really interesting Perfect. Perfect if you've got half an hour or an hour to just wander around and learn something about the world without leaving your house.
Oh, cookies, eh? Right, this ooh, well, a bit different. Right now, this one is on the the blog for HIE Open Sim .com. And this is Sivana, who, of course, was very helpful during the event. And this is her HIE adventure.
Yeah.
So,
Because of course, Sirana, she was a great moderator for us, but she didn't do a presentation. And one might think, well, she's just there to introduce people. Well, you know, she's incredibly talented herself. She's written a bunch of books and she does beautiful drawings. And so this is kind of a little bit about herself. She had a art show over in Second Life a few months back, explaining about her books, which come out in many different languages. Oh, she's such a fun person, and she was just explaining a little bit what the adventure was of being part of the HIE when you've got so many people
wonderful,
from
yeah.
different parts of the world and different languages. So it's really her thing.
Attractive
There she
avatar,
is.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, she's lovely.
Oh, that's our green room. I recognise that.
And with all the clocks. And this is her region, which you can visit. This also is on Craft Grid. And you can see, again, this is the beauty of OpenSim, that her exhibition in Second Life lasted a couple of weeks. But of course, she was able to bring all that into OpenSim and have it up permanently. So if you missed it in Second Life, you can catch it right here in Craft Grid.
And there she is again. Oh, yes, and our trees.
Yeah, some art by Tina Bay. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, and well, we've got two more. The other one that I just got today, actually, although it's obviously posted yesterday. Um, the Dak Theon Empire. Is that how you pronounce it?
I have no idea. I I copy pasted. Yes, this is a place on Mobius, and it's really beautiful. If
Oh,
you are looking for something unusual to visit, this is just it's glorious. It's huge builds. I don't know what kind of bar it is, but it's massive. And it just seems to go on and on. And there's loads of teleports that bring you to different biomes. It's fun and it's
oh
relaxing
yeah.
and it's beautiful.
Oh yeah. You can get the bit of the Mobius grid sort of on the ground there. I thought it didn't look like Mobius grid at first, but then there's little touches put in here. Yeah, wonderful. I noticed you see your text says a bit Alice through the looking glass, a touch Whovian, and a tiny bit Minecraft, and plenty Mobian.
Yeah,
So,
it's really great. Yeah, it's a brilliant build, and not just very talented. And this was a new thing for me, so I was glad to share it with the people who read HG Safari because we don't get to go everywhere. Obviously, there's only 20 destinations in each season, so we only get to go to 60 places in a year. But that's the amount of places there are to see runs into the thousands and tens of thousands. So
yeah.
it's nice to be able to keep looking at new places all year round, really.
I love those mushroom houses thing. It's so odd. It's such a juxtaposition. You've got the ground and the mushroom house, as it were, but then the ground itself under that is just uh, I don't know. It's an interesting juxtaposition of two sort of terraform things, really. Looks
Definitely worth going and
yeah,
exploring because I certainly didn't see it all. So these are just a few pictures of this and that. So
some moving bits. Nice. Okay. Very striking, I must say. I love it when you get your animations and the light as well. Sort of captured everything there, really. And oh, that's busy. A spaceport or something. With, oh, let's see. And there we go. That was the final one there. Okay, now I've also loaded up. We're going to look at it in a second. a previous Hypergrid Safari blog, actually, which featured our guests. So I think we covered all our introductory stuff now. So I'd like to move back to our guests and I'll introduce them again. Cooper, welcome, Cooper.
Thank
Cooper's,
you. Good to be here.
and welcome again, Carla.
Thank you. I'm very interested in all the worlds you just showed. I'm ready to go.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, basically, you both? Have I got this right? I'm looking at your email address on the slide there. It's traininginthe21stcentury.com. Is that
Yes,
that's the actual full website, is it?
yes.
And then
That
on Kitely, you've what's the region called in Kitely? It's not just training.
it's training in the 21st century. I might have it listed under T21C, but
Oh, of course, that's how I found it, or didn't get there, but I
yeah,
found it. Okay, TT1C is the
right.
region on
Mhm.
Kindly that you operate out of. So, welcome to the show, and maybe let's tell us a little bit how about you came by. Now, before we show anything else, as I mentioned, I've got this older blog from there's a safari blog called Kitely's Caveman, and at least I think I have. Where's it gone? Maybe it. Oh, that's a bit disappointing. All right, there it is. Okay, thought we'd lost it for a minute. Okay, so yeah, I have some. I've got some pictures here that basically show what happened when we arrived there on safari. So, um, I mean, Thursday can comment on these or whatever, but maybe while I'm showing them in the background, so to speak, maybe tell us how you got started. What came first, the website or the Inworld stuff, for example?
Well, I'll start off with
Yeah, sure.
they both came at probably the same time. We started working in 3D worlds because of the company I was working for when I was back in the Bay Area. And long story short, I got tired of going traveling around the world, traveling around the country doing trainings. So, with Carla's assistance and her working on the content, we created environments so that the training I was doing face to face now became trainings in 3D.
Right.
So the
Oh,
cave is just one of the environments that we use to create content for the learner for what we're going to be teaching them.
cool.
And the day that you all went through, since then, we've changed the cave. It's more like how it was at Open Sim Fest. It's now
Right.
Mm.
teaching about how people lived in caves. And Carla did an extensive research, and I'll let her tell what you did.
Well, the theme this year at Open Simfest was jazz and blues, and so since we were going to use the cave environment, we're like, what can we do? So we decided to do something on the origins of music. So we found some, pictures, and I also found places where people actually were playing stalactites, stalagmites, rocks, and reproductions of 50 and 60,000-year-old flutes. And in modern music, so we set it up as like walking through the cave was walking through a museum with things on pedestals where you could click and get a note card that told you about the instrument and played the music. You could click the people in there and learn about their lives as you walk through. So it was a multi-dimensional learning experience. We had a few videos in there too that would show people some things.
It's
Right.
very effective the way you've got so many things moving. You've got the little animish people, and you have the plants, and you have the waterfalls. So
Yeah.
when you enter there, you really do get a wonderful feeling of being inside a cave. I love it.
Yeah, yeah, we work with Kim Starr will do some customized people for us. So if we want cave people, she'll do some cave people, and they're animesh, and then we can use different animations so it has a sense of, you know, people being actually alive in there. Um, it really does add a lot of dimensions to the experience, we think.
I have another question. So this that you're doing here now, you never did this in Second Life. You came directly to Kitely to set this up, or did you used to also do it in Second Life previously?
It was built in Second Life when I went to the University of Washington for a course in 3D. But it was never used for training in Second Life.
But
Everything, go
our
ahead.
our initial training for Bruce's uh, course in his company was originally set up in Second Life. Um, that was way back when, and there weren't that many worlds, and there was no hypergrid.
Ah, that's
Okay.
going back. So the pictures on Thursday's blog here, and in fact some film I'll be coming up with later, is actually when the safari visited. But the brief bit of film we showed just now was at the SF Fest, yeah.
Oh,
But
right.
No,
you're
that
now
this was
sorry.
Oh,
no this the video that you're showing right now is what was on. Carla and I have our own land, so this was on my land
oh,
that
what?
that the HG Safari went on.
Oh yeah, yeah. Here we are. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm getting confused too.
No, no. I was actually
It's
what I was
easy.
doing.
It's easier.
What I was,
It's easy for us to know that because we can see lifted pixel, and you can
yeah,
always recognize her.
yeah.
That's definitely a Safari
No,
event.
yeah, this is a GIF, not this is a GIF picture rather than a video. Now, the video I showed before this, though, was from the festival, and you just mentioned that if we were to go to this region again now, you've remodeled it based on the model you had at the festival.
Mhm.
Correct.
Is that yeah? So yeah, well, we haven't got an example of that, but that's interesting. So it was quite fun. I'll get to the video later, but you know, sort of at first I thought, oh, it's a cave, you know, but then I realised around the side there's another bit, and then there's the other bit, and of course it's the Lascaux or I don't know. I say Lascaux caves, but I don't think that's the right
Mhm.
pronunciation. The original,
I have another question. I have another question. So I'm just trying to imagine what it's like when you teach students in here. So how long would a typical training session last? You know, you obviously you get the people, make them understand how to get in world and everything, and then the course begins. So how long typically would a course like this last?
Anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, no longer than 2 hours, only because even though I can sit in here for hours, most people don't have the luxury to do that. And if you're doing it for a company, time is money. But what we did was we created our courses so that students would come in on Monday, take the class, they'd have all week long to put into practice what they learned, and then came back on Friday and we did a debrief, and then we went into another part of the course or started with something brand new, depending on how long the course would take. Because we do a variety of different courses, everything from sexual harassment prevention through bullying, communications, behavioral interviewing, things of that nature.
And
I
Bruce,
I only
go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I only laugh because we teased poor old Cooper mercilessly when we came to visit him because it said sexual harassment training. And we were thinking, well, I live in Italy. Nobody needs that training. They're born knowing how to do that. So we thought it was hilarious. So I
well,
apologize about
things
that,
could be
Cooper.
a simple line can be misinterpreted.
We're trying to retrain ourselves to do sexual harassment prevention training.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes, you taught us something.
Right, yeah. And it's important.
I, I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
everybody could use an improvement, of course. But oh look, there's Kimmy Star in the picture.
Yeah,
Ah,
she's
there she
the
is.
creator of our animish. But one thing I'll mention too, that when we did the training for what that Bruce took from, it was a week-long training that they would do face to face. And that's why what we did was spread it over about a 6-week period. And people would come in twice a week. And the other thing that we would start the Friday class, he mentioned we'd come on Monday. The Friday class would always start with, what did you, of the things you've learned so far, what did you use this week and how did it go? And that was really important for reinforcing people wanting to find an opportunity to try some new way of managing people, and also to share what they were learning and encourage each other. So I think that made a huge difference for this kind of behavior change training.
Right. And so, how many years have you been doing this? Is this like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
We've been doing it since like 20, 2010. It took a while to implement it because many people were skeptical. They thought it was a game, which there's nothing wrong with games, and we do have different games or immersive things that they can do that they can't do in real life. What the biggest thing I really would like to point out to everyone is that the whole reason for doing this was I lose it. My attention span is horrible. It's great when I'm in here. So we learned to adapt a lot of the trainings that we did face to face and put it into 3D. And where everyone thought this course was going to fail, it succeeded. The people that took the courses had more discussions, more in-depth discussions than they ever did when I had them face to face with me. So there
Ah,
is an advantage to having the 3D. Besides being, saving companies money, people actually could, where they wouldn't do something in a face-to-face class, they
yeah.
can quote hide behind their avatar.
Yeah,
Mm.
basically they gain confidence. It's quite well known.
Correct.
Sort of, with a persona, there's enough missing from the real that you can have confidence. Nobody sees your face, for example, but your face is what the avatar you want them to see. And yeah, it's very true. People come out, as it were, of their shells. When they're attending or performing as avatar. It's remarkable,
Right.
really.
Yeah, and I think when you're asking people to do something new, do something in a different way, it's they feel very constrained and insecure, and so that really does help with their willingness to try out being somebody different than what they've been.
Yeah.
And I think is a big advantage.
I've often made the power that would show that. Well, I'd have to see your students, as it were, in situ here, but with like simulations, like I don't know, say ancient Rome, for example. Somebody can build a sort of thing that they think is ancient Rome and role play it in it, or
Hmm.
they can get people to come in and inhabit the different roles there and role play, but the division between role play and the educational part of it is can actually blur because you're learning about if you might be role playing a serving woman in the servicing the I don't know, the underground heated water beneath Rome or whatever, and then you've got the rich class, the senators, which and people, and a different person be role playing each, but a visitor actually can see the difference between the underclass and the ruling class, so to speak, as they walk around in the environment, and it's on display. So it goes well beyond role play. It becomes a completely, it's like a theatre performance, but totally educational. So
Yeah.
there's lots
Yeah,
of
and I think it's easier to sort of, walk in somebody else's shoes this way too, when you're playing those roles and really get a feeling that you just by reading about it you don't get, but when you really kind of experience being treated a certain way, it's like, what? um, you really start to understand how those differences play out in real life better. but it's still
I have
not
another
quite
question.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So I'm sorry. And I was just curious. Obviously, each of your students or your clients, if you will, they make an account so that they can come into Kitely. So I presume they each make a personal account, and then you probably give them some sort of avatar that they can use, or propose a variety of different bodies and clothing that they can use. So I'm just curious. So that means there's an awful lot of new people in Kitely in terms of accounts that have been made thanks to your course. Is that correct, or have I misunderstood?
In some cases, they have made their own, but what we did for one company is we made 25 avatars for them, customized them. Then the only thing they had to do was download Firestorm. But we're finding that, especially myself, I think they need to learn how to create their own avatar so that they become that avatar.
Mm.
I think it's important for them to recognize themselves and feel comfortable in their own skin, so to speak.
Mm.
it's back to the inhabitation thing, isn't it? Really, I mean, you can a lot of these new model virtual worlds. We mentioned this the other week. There's one thing missing that only Second Life and OpenSim have, and that is the real-time collaboration. You may have
Mhm.
wonderful
Right.
mesh. You may have avatars that you can customize and change, in a few minutes. But only in Second Life or OpenSim can you put a prim down and not only mangle it, but then you can go to a partner and you can put the rights to them and they can add the textures. So, people can fully collaborate just like they would in a real world space because they have this ability to, well, collaborate. And for all these other worlds, the new worlds, you can attend them, you can go to meetings, you can go to concerts, you can go to a lot of things. But one thing missing is that real time collaboration, which you can only do here. And I think you're very right when you say encourage people to make their own avatars, because so many of those other worlds, you get an avatar off the shelf, you go in, you don't feel that the avatar belongs to you. You maybe choose one that's a bit like you attend the event, and then you're off. And maybe you're never back in that world again for ages, and then you look, oh, what was my avatar thinking? I think that engagement thing is vital.
I have a question. Do you think about embodied learning? So, for example, when I think about learning content in a classroom, I remember my body sitting in a chair looking at a screen, as opposed to being in a simulation like this. When I think about the things I've learned, I remember being in a cave and walking from room to room and walking up to the figures and interacting with them. And is embodiment an aspect of your learning theory?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. It's a big part of it. This sense of being present with others and being present in the space. I think it makes it more memorable for you, the experiences you have there. And you can, as you were saying, you do things together in this world. You don't just sit and talk to little, like even say with teleconferences where or video conference calls where you have little thumbnails of people's faces, and yet you're all sitting in your own worlds and you can't see each other fully if you've got more than a handful of people. So this really gets people to feel like they're part of a group. You can do competitive things, you can do collaborative things, you can do individual things, self-paced and real-time group processes. We use it for all of those ways, and the importance of that spatial memory of feeling like you were there, I think really brings home for many people what they're learning to help them remember the content and the experience.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
There's also a huge factor, I believe, and I'll be interested to hear if you agree too. People say, well, everything should be really, really simple. It should be very, very simple that the person just can come in. But there is I feel, a great value to having to kind of work at figuring out how things
Huh.
operate and making the viewer work. If you are willing to spend that energy to figure things out, you've made an investment in the world. In this case, in OpenSim, but it's true, really, in general in life, nothing worthwhile is ever easy. And so I do agree with what Mal was saying, and I wonder if you feel like, well, if the view was just really absolutely as simple as can be, do you think that people would find that easier? Would that be better for you guys, or do you think, are you happy with the fact that they're using the Firestone view, which obviously has way more controls than they need to be able to complete the course they're doing with you guys? What do you think, Dilpa?
When it
Who's
comes, when it,
who's
well,
going
I
to
get,
answer
yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that. I guess the best thing I can say is when we created training, because we know people are brand new, we keep it so that they're more focused on the content, because that's the whole reason for the training. So, for
Yeah.
example, the cave, it keeps you focused. You don't get to see all the beautiful trees and flowers outside. However, as our trainings progress, you are outside and there are outside
Mm.
stimulations. But then I could take you through a tunnel of trees that'll get you focused again and have pop-up screens come up that you have to sit and,
Mm.
that you'll walk by. And we have discussions on that. Carla?
Yeah, I think we try to balance that, and in terms, I think you also mentioned the, just the toolbars and things on Firestorm. One of the things we do initially as part of orientation, making sure everybody knows how to turn on their voice and walk and turn and things like that and zoom in, is also we identify the default screen exactly what areas, what tabs they're really going to need to use. Because a lot of the stuff you might use later, but you don't need it. So when you first come in, you need to, we'll highlight in red, outlined those specific tabs that a new person needs to be able to find. And everything else they can just ignore. So we've learned through experience that it's overwhelming when people come in and they see top toolbar, bottom toolbar, side toolbar. Oh my gosh, where do I look?
I
So we
don't
Well,
know. I don't know whether you remember, but Krista Lopes, who actually invented the hypergrid for OpenSim, she also developed a viewer called OnLook Viewer. It's based on Singularity, in fact, not Firestorm. But the whole idea, she's in education, was that this was a viewer that had no bells and whistles. You could go
Mhm.
straight in. There were no floating pallets, nothing. You could just attend. You could sit. You could go sit on something. You could listen to people, attend a lecture or whatever. But you couldn't actually really do anything else because
Mhm.
it wasn't that she didn't want you to. It's just that those were distractions in the strict education sense. You could always plug them in the extra things later if you wanted them, but the default was the absolute simplest, you
Right.
know, approach.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that we do in terms of like with somebody coming in new for the first few sessions, if we have a 6 session course or something. I mean, there are things that are just 1 session, but 6 session course where the first thing they have to do, they have to walk and click. That's it. Walk and click, walk and click. And then we might add things that require a little bit more retrieve a note card. Little by little add that on so that cognitively they're not overloaded all the time with trying to just figure out how to function in the class. So they start off real simple, walk, click, then, oh, now here you need to go open this, do that. Um, we'll build that in as part of the training and also with activities that they begin to do more things than just walk and click as they progress through a series of sessions.
So
one other
they,
thing
you've got
I'd
the
like to,
perfect balance there, really, between you, just so you don't demoralize them with that they can't do things, but you
Right.
kind of encourage them because they're acquiring, know-how. That's a great idea. Sorry, Bruce,
and
what were you going to say?
one other thing I'd like to add, when because we did the courses on Monday and Friday, they had
Mm.
work that they needed to come in and do so that they could, operate the way they needed to. But we would find boxes or balls so a lot of them started experimenting, which
Mhm.
also led them to want to help us create more things. So It
That's
was an
incredible.
advantage by having all those toolbars down there and not talking about them, as you mentioned.
Mm.
But they decided that they wanted to explore. Because part
Uh,
of education is exploring, whether it's the content you're learning or something else that had to do with it.
Absolutely. I
talking of
agree.
learning, while we're still on the caves, anecdotally, back in the midst of time, I used to work with comic strips and things, and from what I remember, the Lasso cave paintings are actually the earliest known records of sequential art made by man.
Correct.
It's pretty cool.
So putting scans of the actual, story bits, as it were, intermittently in the cave. I mean, you can't do it fully, obviously, but just as thought, just look at these things. My God, what was this 3 or 4 thousand years ago? And it was
Oh,
telling stories. We're telling stories in the virtual world now, so it's a progression, in
yeah.
storytelling terms. But I just thought I'd mention that because not all
And I
everybody
think,
would know that.
didn't you, Cooper, didn't you bring some slides with us? Do you want to show us some of the slides that you brought and tell us that story?
Yes, I was just going
Sure.
to. Let's go to the end of that.
So, um, as you can see, it says leveraging 3D environments and soft skills training. On December 9th at 2:30 SLT time, we will be doing this at the OSCC. So we encourage people to come not only to see what we're doing, but what everyone else is doing. These are the different environments that we create trainings in. We have the castle. So I'll switch over to the hear ye that you see on the right hand side of the screen. That's a whole training that we're doing, and we're asking people to come and participate. We really would like people who really know how to get around in 3D, because this is to test how well the quest goes. Prior to the quest, which we're not going to be doing, is the substance of the training, which is about change management. But Robin Hood needs help. He's got to save the king. So if you're interested, please RSVP, go into Kitely, RSVP me, or you can email me no later than November 29th so that we can get people to save the king.
Brilliant.
Carla, do you have anything you want to say on this slide of the
Um,
environments?
Yes. Oh, yeah. We're looking for feedback about how the quest worked for them. Was it fun? Was it engaging? Was it boring? What could we do to make it better? What really worked? All those things we'll be asking of our attendees, but it's mostly come in and do this with us. I just want to point it out, like for example, if you notice in the environments for immersive learning, we've got a dome, which I think we got it. Was that at OS Fest?
OS last year.
Last year, 2022. And we started using that because you can see inside the dome from the outside, but when you go inside, you can only see this cloud kind of exterior. So it helps to really enclose people to focus on the topic that we're covering inside that dome. But from the outside, you've got this entire world of domes that you can, go, wow, what's that? What's that? So it's part of focusing people's attention on the topic, but also being able to go beyond that. We use underwater sometimes for the same reason. It's a natural focusing environment. You can see much less um, in the world, so we do that. Bruce has a love of Florence, so we've got all kinds of Florence things around. We put office buildings, the castle for the Robin Hood change management program. And then the other thing is sometimes using the environment to symbolically reinforce what you're talking about. So if you notice that this is another change management uh, terrain that facing and managing change. There's a mountain you've got to climb up. Change is hard. There's lots of unexpected things. And then there's resisting change, which we have an area where we look at where people are resisting change. And this is kind of a reproduction of hell. It's actually a lava pit. And we think that that helps to reinforce that, that change may be hard, but it's worth it. And resisting change when it's necessary is probably going to be disastrous. So we use those. These are some learning. Go ahead, Bruce. You go from here.
Okay, so these are some of our learning activities. This one on the right is they're feeding fish. It's a leadership training. The one on top or the bigger picture is all about bullying. And what they do is they click on the box, then they click on the platform that that box should go to, and it'll float. If it's wrong, the box will come back. This can be done competitively as well as asynchronously so you can learn on your own. There are really 5 platforms, but to make the picture better, I did 4. Over here, these are other games that they click on. They click on boxes to turn them colors.
Yeah, and then you can discuss the
Oh,
differences.
can I just get you to pause on that slide right now? I mentioned earlier that I actually came to this bullying, sexual harassment thing with Val Librarian and the Librarians group quite a while ago. I was hunting around trying to find film, but obviously didn't film it. And I didn't at the time realize it was the same as your other bit we came on with the caves. But I do remember the experience, as basically all the educators with Val were taking the same experience. We were in poses, and the guy was, if I was the woman, well, probably the other way around. Well, no, if I was the woman, and the guy would have a pose, and he'd say to me, maybe he'd lean over to me and get a bit too close and stuff like that, and I'd have to. You ask me a question, and I'd have to say, is this on or is this not on, kind of thing. And some are obvious, but in other instances, it's a bit more subtle, isn't it? I mean, if you're sitting with somebody you've been sitting with them for a while, and you start to gravitate to get a bit closer, then you're unlikely to say that's harassment unless there's a cue in there that suggests it. But if it happens immediately, then your reaction would be say, harassment coming on. Do you
Right.
understand?
Right, that's the
So
problem, isn't it?
yeah,
It's,
so I
it's
actually
the
found
frog in the water situation, isn't it?
yeah.
You don't feel you can say anything because the situation's kind of crept up on you so many
Yeah,
times.
but I did think this was interesting from my point of view because there were different scenarios there. Ones that were fairly lightweight, if that's the right word, and other ones that were really much heavier. And it was interesting to see how different people actually interpreted the thing, but also just being able to sit down, animate, and go through it.
It's
I
brilliant because you've got a body, but you don't have a body. I just think it's just a genius idea because you're allowing people to have a body, but at the same time, you're not putting them, not in the real world having to sit in a certain strange way. You're
yeah.
not creating any real life terrible situation because it's all with the avatars. I think brilliant. Both of you just
But
done such a
practice,
great
it's
job.
practice, it's maybe practice for the real world too for many people.
Yeah.
So yeah. Excellent, excellent. But I remember that I was really, I spent nearly a day in the week trying to find if I had some film of that, but I think I arrived fairly late and didn't film. So.
And I think what you pointed out that because it's so ambiguous, whether it is what is harassment, how do you identify it, how do you recognize it, and how different perspectives there come out from just people talking about seeing something like these two people on the park bench. Is that harassment or not? Why do you think so? Why don't you? Because there's no right or wrong answer to that question, but you bring out a lot of, I think people develop a lot more understanding from just this kind of discussion.
And this can only be done, as you pointed out, Mal, and you, Thurza. This was easy to create in 3D. It would be really hard when I taught the class face to face
Oh,
to
yeah.
get 2 people together and sit like that,
Right.
because who knows how people would be uncomfortable, even though they know it's just a quote skit. In
Yeah.
Right.
3D, it was so much easier to put together, and you know what? Again, we got more conversation out of it than we did in real life.
Yeah.
Right.
Fantastic.
I'm not surprised. Yeah. Ah,
So
These are
my other
just
question
showing.
was,
Sure.
I just before you go, so is your idea to try and encourage other people to try and use virtual worlds, but possibly Kitely, to do similar things? Is that part of what your aim is, to show people, kind of point them in the way that they too could use OpenSim to
Well,
develop
that's
their
that's
training
a
courses too?
that's a really good question, and the answer is yes. Carla and I both belong to what's called ATD Golden Gate. Um, it's about learning and development. We have a special interest group that we co-host, showing people how to use 3D. I'm also the Kitely ambassador for VWEC. For those who don't know, Virtual Worlds Educational Consortium. Um, it started in Second Life. They needed an ambassador because I'm all about, we need to get people to understand that this is a really good platform for training. And
Yeah.
yes, I want, we are willing to do train the trainer. We can set up courses for people. We can do the training for them. You can give us the content. We'll put it together. We've done that for some people. But yes, I don't want to go face to face. It's nice to see your face, but you don't learn as much, I'm gathering, versus doing it here.
Yeah.
Well, I think I like face to face sometimes, but I think this really is a much better if there are certain things you can only do face to face, but there are things you can do in 3D that you can't do in face to face, as we've been discussing. And as far as a substitute or replacement for webinars, which are just mind numbing,
Yeah.
and are not paying attention most of the time. They miss three-quarters of the content that's being presented in most webinars. They're just wretched. And self-paced e-learning, which I also do, is can be very good for certain things, but it's alone. And you'd miss all of the things that you get from learning in a group, for the social learning and that interactive part of it, that of dealing with other people. There's so much you
It's
can do in 3D that you can't do any other way.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of endless Zoom calls where, I don't know,
Yes.
maybe there's 12 people on the call.
Hmm.
Maybe each of them won't show their faces. And forward and will, there's an immediate disbalance.
Right.
It'd be
Yeah.
better to have an all audio or all video, but not
Yeah.
the
And that,
strange
yeah.
disbalance there. Yeah.
And that actually brings up something that I think Bruce really started to focus on early on with us, is keep people moving. Because if you're in 3D and you've got people moving around, if all of a sudden somebody has disappeared from the group, it's because the group kept moving and they were doing their email or something. And so they learn very quickly, pay attention.
I
And it's
cheat.
Well,
so
and what
I
engaging
cheat.
too. You've made such an engaging world that there's so much eye candy happening in your region
Yes,
that you
yes,
can really imagine someone's, maybe they start the course thinking, well, you know what, I'm just going to do my email during this course. But then they probably just don't, because they're just wondering what else is there and trying to figure out how they can to this place or that. So
yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, we've also found many times where people will say, "Oh my gosh, it's been an hour." Where on
Yeah.
a webinar they're going, "Oh, how much longer is this?" Because
Yeah. Yes.
the time passes so quickly in here.
Well, it's just like
one
it's like being with a group in a real place. If it's interesting, time flies. If
Right.
it's boring, God, you can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this the engagement is there. So if you make the
Mhm.
experience engaging, time will fly. And
Yeah.
there's loads of when I'm on safari, for example, I'm usually up in the air filming, and I miss. I have to actually look up the friend in the friends list and then teleport to them to catch up, or set my camera to follow. So I've got an excuse because I need to do that filming. But it is that break up of the tour, so to speak, on say an average safari is. Sometimes I regret it. I think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have bothered filming this. I should have just gone with the crowd. But it swings and roundabouts. You sort of have to choose.
Yeah. I
Cooper,
think
is
when
there
you're
anything you've learned, Cooper? Is there anything that you have that you wish you'd known when you started doing this? Well, both of you, Carla too. Is there anything that's kind of, oh gosh, if only I'd realized that before I started, I could have saved myself a lot of time. Just curious.
I think for me, it's been more of a learning process. One of the things I was going to mention is in order to get 3D into the company I was working with,
Mm.
I started them with I was doing webinars, PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint. And I went, why can't I show my screen, me walking through an environment? And that's how I introduced the 3D environment, doing it during
Um,
a webinar. Those
Yeah.
people paid attention even in the webinar because they didn't know where I was walking. And they actually, I got feedback saying, we felt like we were walking behind you. So that was
that's
a
so
great
cool.
testimonial. I've done the
Mm.
sexual harassment prevention training in 3D. A company that wanted it, I did it 2 years ago. I did it again 2 years later. I said, why do you want me to do it? You can do it for free, online in California. And they said, because if we're going to do it, we'd rather do it in 3D with you. We had fun and we learned.
Yeah.
And, what more could you ask for?
Yeah, I think
Oh, that's
it's hard to say because we've been doing this for so long and we've learned so much little by little. It's always changing. Things are like things, the Animesh figures didn't work before, we couldn't do that, but now we can. And now we're Animaster. We've been working with Kim and with Christine Nin of Ninja Services to create some scripting that will allow us to synchronize the movements of the characters so we can do more complex scenarios that way
Yeah.
and set up things that where people can observe something brief, a minute or 2 minutes long, and then go, oh wow, what did I just see here, and dissect it. So we're learning that. I think one of the things that took me a while to learn was what I mentioned about the toolbars on the your screen and identifying the things that people will need the first few sessions, making that very clear to them. So it was took me a long time to realize that that made a big difference for people.
mm.
Mm. Okay, I'm just I'm stretching my eyes here to read the signage on the Robin Hood poster, which we've still got up. Anybody who opts out will be tied to a pole to prevent them from alerting our enemies. Make your own choice.
We're very serious.
That came as a bit of a shock because up until then it was regular talking. Something I would like to ask before we start wrapping up is because it's always coming up in OpenSim. Um, Obviously, the VWEC, its main base, of course, is in Second Life, and as you say, you're the ambassador in OpenSim, or at least in Kitely, for them. Um, a lot of the success a few years ago, the input into OpenSim, from educators, which I think we say you are, came because the sort of exodus when Linden Lab cut the educators' discount and things like that, people started to look at OpenSim as an alternative. And of course, in many ways, it's better than Second Life because well, not just for educators, for all sorts of people, the opportunities are far greater. You've got freedom to build what you want as opposed to work. You have freedom to build in Second Life, but only within the confines of the land you had and
Mhm.
the rental, and it was expensive, possibly. I'm wondering how you are experiencing that. So, as an ambassador for, well, I'll just say kindly, you go back to VWEC in Second Life, and you tell them about what your projects are, and maybe other people's projects on OpenSim are. Is there still any sort of degree of, I won't say it's not hostility as such, but some people just love Second Life so much. It's not they won't move from Second Life even if they're being ripped off, land and stuff. Whereas others just can't, they see what's possible out here and they just can't wait, to get into the wide freedom of the wide open. I'm just curious as an anecdote here. Really, are you aware of that division, and do you still come across it at all when you're back? Because obviously, as a member of the group there, you go back to Second Life too now and again. Are you aware of the tensions between those two a bit, or do you do more campaigning to get people to come here to Kindly, for example?
Well, I do my best to get people to come over to Kitely. I go to the VWEC meetings in Second Life. You brought it up. That is a Pandora's box for me, and I have brought it up. I have said, I need your help. I can't do this myself. There's not a lot of people, you know, I understand everyone loves Second Life. I like Second Life. I have lots of friends back there from when I started in 2010.
Yeah.
However, there's more than just Second Life. And I believe if VWEC, hopefully, and I don't want to get myself in trouble, but if VWEC wants to succeed, that means everybody, Open Sim, Second Life, has to come together and say, we can work together. Because I do see and they're working very hard in VWEC, and I've made some friends there that understand where I'm coming from. So I'm hoping within the next year there'll be more happening in Kitely, and hopefully other Sims will get ambassadors to get people to work, to come over for them. One of the things that I'm doing differently is I'm going to, instead of, we have a quarterly meeting, and it was always at one time. It's now at 9 o'clock SLT, and I came up with 5 o'clock SLT. That way, Australia can
Yeah.
come and be participants in VWEC.
I do find it kind of strange, though, that the educators who you would think would be the most quick to research things and have open minds are so lagging behind artists, because most artists who work in OpenSim also go over to Second Life now and again, and they do a show over there, and then
Mm-hmm.
they have actually made things here in OpenSim where it's free to make stuff, which is a huge factor. Just being
Right.
able to make things and explore and try things out and not have to pay that, that absolutely killer of 10 lindens for every, it mounts up, but you know better than me how much it mounts up. So just the complete freedom to experiment until you get your perfected item, and then you could take it to Second Life. And artists are doing that all the time. You could think of dozens of people who have, sometimes they have a show in Second Life, and then they'll come back and they'll do something here in OpenSim. So there's a huge fluidity amongst artists to do that. And I'm a little, I guess it's maybe it's a cultural thing that artists tend to be a bit more gypsy in their soul, and so they don't have a problem having, moving around. They're not afraid of the unknown, as it were. So many times artists will have regions on a dozen different grids, where they do a dozen different things, so they kind
But
of
also,
spread out the risk and so forth.
yeah, and also artists, and sort of speak for myself here in a way, design wise. There's you, you like sometimes to be on your own to do things. You need the space, the land, and whatever to get on with what you want to do, but you're not particularly social. I'm not saying artists are antisocial, but it's a different thing when you want to socialize. I remember once in Second Life, I forget who it was, somebody we know quite well, who was building something in Second Life, and I went to visit, and they couldn't get rid of me quick enough, because I was interrupting their work. Now that doesn't really happen in OpenSim. You can, it's set up. You can be anonymous somewhere and you can get on with it. And then when you've finished your mega art, you can bring it along to a gallery somewhere and show it off. You have that distinction, to get away from the crowd or be in the crowd.
I agree.
In
But
Second
it
Life,
also,
always in the crowd.
exactly, one doesn't exclude the other.
I
You can
know.
be in both, and that's the thing that I think a lot of these people are missing, that they can't do both.
I
Yeah.
think it's a little
And
bit, for me, part of it has to do with some of the people I know who are really loyal to Second Life. First, I think Second Life has made some big improvements over the time I was there when their customer service was terrible. I think they've worked hard to improve that. But I think people, once, having moved from world to world a few times now, it's an enormous job to set up a new world, especially if we're doing, each time we do the training, we do it a little differently. We add or, change or update or whatever, but it's still a lot of work to set it up when we have to, to change worlds. And you've got all those connections, the artists, the scripters, the builders that you work with in one world may not be working in another.
Sure.
So there are lots of reasons people want to stay where they are if they have something that they've really built that's working for them. So I think a lot of the people I know who are dedicated to Second Life, that's part of it.
I think too, though. I mean, when you're trying to get the message across to like Second Life and things, ever since Mesh arrived, people in Second Life, some who do Mesh, have learned
Hmm.
to actually do it in Unity or things offline and then import it. And to
Hmm.
me, it's a great advantage that you can author things, complex things, and then bring a duplicate into both places. It's
Right.
fully
Yeah.
your own, and sort of, that's not the living world. But if you want to have a village, build a village and then put it in both places,
Yeah.
then people can live in the village. But yeah, it's an odd it's an odd thing. I mean, I know people who should know better, who intelligently,
Yeah.
on the TV show in Second Life, for example, I better mention the show, but the host of that still has not got to grips with what OpenSim is. She once, I think they did a couple of shows over here or something, and they got it all wrong. You know, it just they hadn't investigated, what the possibilities are. And I too love Second Life. It's very rare that I go in there because even in my little cache gets a lot of lag. But as you say, it's sort of there are reasons to go there. But you get the best of both worlds, as Thursday said. These are not mutually exclusive places. Some
Hmm.
people
And
will
it sounds
prefer,
like gentle persuasion is the way to go
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
from what you guys are saying.
besides
Soft
the cost
training.
of besides the cost of the uploading textures,
Oh,
because
God.
I'll often make little changes after I see it in 3D. I was like, no, it doesn't work here. My PowerPoint worked fine, but I have to change the way this slide works when I'm doing some kind of pop-up or something. But so that can get costly. But I think Kim has mentioned that the the um, the the lag element of Animesh in Second Life is much greater. That
Yeah.
you can
Oh,
have
is it?
a lot more, there's a lot less lag in open sim worlds using the Animesh characters than there is whatever they're doing that technically that makes a difference. It much more lag on the system to use those, so you can use a lot less of it, or you have to have a lot more uh, area that we're paying for. So there are,
That's
Basically,
interesting.
despite the fact you pay through the roof, Linden Labs, out of habit, put 4 regions on one simulator, a server. You don't need to do that in OpenSim. So
Mhm.
if you've got 4 regions in different parts of the Second Life grid, both and all 4 are quite busy. The
Mhm.
fact that they probably on the same server is of no help.
Killer.
You need a balancing thing where you just the region, load up 3 empty regions around a full region. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things, but they're in it for the money. So they
Yeah.
have to show their profit thing there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we best sort of start to wrap up. I clearly forgot at the beginning, and it's only about 2 minutes here actually. A couple of clips I meant to show at the beginning while we were doing the happenings. One, it's just 40 seconds of an N64 music player in OpenSim here. Just have a look at this quickly on the big main screen. There you are. I never quite sort of got what was happening here, but it's sort of interactive scripting, and it's a console, isn't it? And then you're getting all the stuff coming up in the thing at the bottom. I like toys, especially when they work virtually, so to speak. Um,
Doing something.
yeah, exactly. But the other clip actually is, I think it's the same guy. This is Immersion Island, and I think it's the same guy who filmed your cave at the festival. What's his name?
Oh,
Mike.
Mike.
Yeah, I did
Mike.
a great job. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a long form of this. It's about 20 minutes, but he also published this one, which is just a couple of minutes, and it's something I forgot happened in OpenSim. It's Macy's Thanksgiving Day tribute parade,
Oh, it
Oh,
and
was fantastic. I was there this
yeah,
past Thanksgiving.
so this is great. Oops. Oh, sorry, it's got away. Sorry, I clicked on the volume there to try and get it up for you, but it worked a bit wrong.
While this is playing, can I ask another question?
Yeah.
I'm just curious to know. I noticed you guys uh, both use an expression that I've heard other people say it, and I wondered what's behind it. Quite often, people will say they'll talk about Kitely, and then they'll say and in OpenSim, as if Kitely isn't part of OpenSim. And I wondered if that's a sensation that you have, that you feel like, Kitely is this kind of gated community just outside the urban center, or if it's some kind of throwover from Sekima. Because most people, I mean, obviously there are many grids that are not hypergrid enabled, and so they obviously feel much more cut out of OpenSim, and yet they're still in OpenSim. But Kitely is 100% in OpenSim. It's a commercial grid, true, but I mean it's no different from, say, Wolf Territories or any other grid that has a commercial basis to it. So is that just an expression that you use, or do you really feel isolated from OpenSim?
I don't feel isolated. I just think of tightly because I've not really explored a whole lot of OpenSim, but I know that Kitely is part of OpenSim, if that explains it.
I make the distinction, and more so now, like when I introduced the show, the important thing is the hypergrid. We're on the hypergrid, we're bringing all the variety and stuff to people, that, for the show point of view, obviously. But to me, when I'm describing it, Linden Labs have an engine, a Havoc engine or whatever they've turned it into now, that is a platform that runs the grid, the platform, right? OpenSim has the Open Simulator engine that runs all the Open Simulator installations, hundreds or thousands of us. But the hypergrid is an OpenSim extension that connects them all together, which Second Life doesn't have. And
Yeah, I
I
appreciate
always
that.
try.
I'm just very concerned when people talk about Tightly and OpenSim as if
Nah,
you guys are not part of OpenSim. I feel like it's very dangerous
yeah,
to
I don't
take
like
that
it.
attitude, because you're kind of cutting. I don't mean you two, Cooper and Carla. I don't mean you personally. I just mean when I hear people say that from Tightly, it's like, oh boy. So kind of, is it a them and us situation? Because it's a shame, because there's so much out there in OpenSim, in all of OpenSim, that's worth. Obviously, there are
I
parts that
think.
are a little bit more dodgy. Nobody's claiming that it's all the same, but there's so much out there that could help, the inhabitants of Kitely to enjoy more the sense of OpenSim and learn a lot about what's possible in OpenSim, and vice versa. Don't you feel?
Do you
I don't know
I
think?
what
will.
Carla thinks of that.
I have to
I
say,
wonder.
I spend a lot of time working on creating the stuff we're working on. And so I don't, balancing my real life and getting exercise and socializing with people who aren't in world at all. So I don't get around as much in the hypergrid. I'm starting to more. But I think, it's a comfort level of, once you start doing it, it's like, oh, it's not that difficult to get from one world to another, which is really exciting. And, like you said, the things you were showing early on were really intriguing. I'd love to go. But I go in and I work, and then before I know it, the day's over, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm tired and I have real life things to do. So I think that's part
Understand
of
that, yeah. And
Kitely's.
that's exactly, yeah, that's exactly why we started the Safari group, because everybody who is in OpenSim is busy. I mean, there are very few people that just, it's not like Second Life. People don't come into OpenSim just to kind of be consumers. Everybody's making something. They're working on a project. They're building their own place. So they're doing something. They're not just kind of hanging around. So because of that, that's why we started doing the Safari trips, because it gives everybody an opportunity to say, hold on a minute, I'm doing this, but let me go and see what other people are doing. And from that, of course, loads of connections are born, because then people get to know somebody else who's a really good builder, who gives them an idea or helps them out with a
I think
script, and the whole thing snowballs.
Mhm.
I think the
Yeah.
kindly thing, actually, I mean, a bit of it is laid at Elon's feet a bit. He always promotes that grid as, he calls all his regions. He doesn't call them regions, he calls them virtual worlds. Because they're not interconnected. You can't walk from one to the other, which is something you almost expect in,
Well,
virtual
and most
worlds.
of them are
But
inaccessible anyway.
yeah,
If you go into Kitely, I would say 99% of the world, you'll get a message saying no foreigners allowed here.
yeah, you've got,
So
yeah.
yeah, it's a
It's so
different spirit.
it's almost as though there's a gate round this. It's not permanently closed, but it's hard work to get it open, And yeah, I mean, I spent a long time at the beginning building and building and building from one sim to two to four to about nine on the Great Canadian Grid, which back in the original Great Canadian Grid, and I did find myself in there all the while adding to the land, dropping meshes or trying to terraform. Never very good at that. Um, and I didn't really travel that much because, but I was building this world around me. And I'm sure that is the case, for a lot of people. We were talking about the reasons people don't come from Second Life to Open Sim. Well, I know from my former partners, she used to be in what was Apple's chat room called? I don't know what I had, but anyway, in the early days of their.com and then ultimately Second Life, what happened is Second Life got a lot of people because they moved over as a tribe. There were tribes of people in these chat rooms, and they moved the whole tribe, right, into Second Life because it was the big new thing. There's never been quite. I mean, there are instances in OpenSim of communities that are really the tribe has moved for financial reasons, probably from Second Life to, if they're role players, for example, they don't care where the role play grid is, so long as they're role playing. So they move as a whole community, a whole tribe. And I think that's one of the bonuses when we talk about persuading people to come over and things. If you can appeal to a whole tribe of people to come as a group, because people do fall into tribes an awful lot in virtual worlds, whichever virtual world it is. Oh, I'm in the book club, or I slay dragons. Such a variety of things. And I think the key really is to get the tribes over. Tell them that they can have a self-contained place. That they just don't get in Lyndon's platform. But I'm rabbiting again, aren't I?
I think that makes sense to me too, but I think like doing the safari is maybe a wonderful way to
Yeah.
get people like me who, get stuck on their whatever world they're on, to go out and look at the rest. It's, see the wonderful things people are doing is great for your own creativity. So I appreciate knowing it's there. I'm going to have to join.
We would love it. We would love to have it. It's been so nice to have you with us tonight. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed this conversation.
Absolutely, me too. I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up now. Before James will probably hit a button in a minute or two, which would make you jump out. It make you jump out.
Oh boy, here it comes
Oh,
again.
and it's not the whistle. It's not the whistle. Believe me, if you heard the real one, it'll make you jump out your skin. Unless you're a Pink Floyd fan. But so before we go, however, I would like James, who is often quiet because he's very busy on the back end, so to speak. James, do you have any additional queries, questions for Cooper and Carla?
No additional questions. I've enjoyed visits to your work, and I loved walking through the caveman exhibit, and I just cannot express to people how rich an amount of information is in that exhibit. You can click on just about anything, and you can learn so much. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Learning is forever, as they say. It's a lifelong process, so more the better. Okay, folks. Well, all things must pass, as they say, and this is the end of the show for this week.
And thank you for having us here. We really enjoyed it too.
Okay, so I was just about to thank you individually, so thank you, Carly. You can say that again. And thank you, Cooper.
Thank you both. Actually, all three of you.
Right, thank you as always to James Atloud for fiddling with his knobs and sitting.
Glad to be here.
And thanks to my wonderful co-host, of course, the person who really keeps it all going, though she won't admit it, is Thosa Ember. Thank you, Thosa.
Wonderful show. What enthusiasm. I loved it. Thanks so much, everybody.
Indeed. Okay, so I'm going to sign off as normal. I'm going to wish you all a very good morning, a very good afternoon, a very good evening, or indeed a good tomorrow, depending on wherever and whenever you are. And we're out of here. Bye for now.